Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here. Blake, lots happened in basketball off the court. Been a few days since we have caught people up on what is going on in the SEC. Get us started. What has everybody missed if they've been tuned out for the last 4 or 5 days?
I mean, I don't even know where to tell you to start. Take your pick. I mean, obviously there's been numerous players that have entered the draft. Tyree Appleby's left Florida. Marcus Williams left Texas A&M. Seems like Jalen Bridges, the West Virginia transfer, I think is scheduled to visit to Alabama. Nigel Pack, the Kansas State transfer, has interest in Tennessee, or Tennessee has interest in him. Adding him to the list of, a lot of other teams. We talked about him on the last episode, whenever that was. I mean, really, it's one of those where, look, I can go a lot of different directions here, but if you want the best up to date to the second, verbal commits is still the place to go. Like I mentioned, I mean, Marcus Williams, that transfer was announced less than an hour ago. Ole Miss got a commitment from the kid from Jackson State not by 30 minutes ago. So it's just, I mean, again, it's everyone knows kind of how this works now. It's just you're going to have this stuff constant over the next month. I mean, I think that's probably a good time frame. Like, this is going to still go on in terms of transfers probably for the next month or so. So, I mean, it really is. It's just it's a wait and see game. Eric Stevenson, who left South Carolina, we talked about that. He's at West Virginia now. I think Woodley, who was at South Carolina, rejoining Frank Martin at UMass. But the bigger ones are just the guys that are entering the draft. Jaylin Williams goes into the draft, still has the option to return, of course. So as we talked about before, that'll be a big one for Arkansas, who still, by many respects, I said on the previous one, I think Arkansas is a top 5 team in the preseason next season. If Williams comes back, I think Kentucky's hovering right there around the top 5 too. Man, it's just like, what else, right? Of course, Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler. I think someone had asked a question about Kessler, coming back, but I think obviously, he's going to head to the NBA, it seems now. And he put out the announcement on that, whatever day it was. Don't ask me what day it is or was this weekend. But yeah, it's just, I mean, there's a lot happening. That's the best way to put it is, it's just nonstop, and it's kind of to the point now to where this was what you expect. And after the national championship game, I think there'll still be a lot more movement and those kind of things. So that's where things stand now. But by the time you watch this video, there could be multiple other guys that have transferred in or out, and so we'll see.
Okay, a lot of stuff mentioned there. Give me the 2 or 3 most impactful items of the stuff you just read off.
Obviously, I think it's Jaylin Williams. If he comes back, that's a huge difference for Arkansas. So I think there's no doubt that that's significant because, like I said, they're a top 5 team if he does, maybe top 3 team if he does. So, that's clearly significant. Tyree Appleby leaving Florida seems pretty significant to me, but that's a coaching change. It's not like it's shocking in any way. So I don't think that's surprising. LSU doesn't have any scholarship players back from last season. That's surprising either? No, not really. Because I think it's just anytime there's a coaching change, we've talked about it. It's kind of what you've come to expect. I know everyone had some fun with that on Twitter, the graphic that ESPN put out about LSU having no scholarship players after Will Wade's firing. But as we've said, they picked up a couple from Murray State now, and Matt McMahon will rebuild the roster the best he can right away. And what else? The Smith Kessler thing, not surprising at Auburn. It's significant, but not surprising. You never really were looking ahead to Auburn with them coming back anyways. Right. I don't think so. So I think it's all that. I don't even know if we mentioned Jaden Shackelford going to the NBA. He won't be back. So, I don't think he'll be back. And so, that's, it's certainly significant for Alabama. But when you think about what Alabama has coming in, it's still one where they're just kind of, I think you try to plug and replace with that. So, Yeah, I mean, it's look, like we said, it's if you have a favorite team, you're probably tapped into where things stand right now, I would think. And for everyone else, we're not leaving anything out just for for any reason other than there's just so much happening, and it's impossible to keep up with all this right now, just because there are so many moving pieces. And like I mentioned, things won't really settle down, I think, till the 1st of May or so. That's usually how this goes. I mean, there's almost, I think, 1150 transfers right now. So, yeah, I think
Wow.
it's still, just try to figure out how you're building your roster. And, coach is still putting together his staffs, the new guys. And, Dennis Gates still trying to put together a staff. And so are all these other guys. So that's the next point if you want to start watching for that kind of stuff. Final Four is always a big week for coaches to get together, and new coaches start building their staffs after the Final Four because they've talked to a lot of guys there. And so I think that's something to certainly watch for if you're looking at that. So I mean, otherwise it's just, again, it's take your pick on all this stuff right now. So
Lost my train of thought. Let me ask you another question, and then I'll get back to it hopefully. Coaching news and anything, assistants coming, going. You got new coaches in the league. They're going to have their new staffs. Anything that stood out to you in terms of assistants that have been brought into the league or who have left the league in the last week?
I mean, I know there are guys coming in, but if you had to ask me to name them all right this second, it'd be a tough order, because I know, we talked about, I think, again, I don't remember when we did one. I think we did one of these Thursday or Friday of last week, but I think we talked about Todd Golden had pretty much built his staff. Trying to think of what else has happened since then. Um, it is like it's a blur, because remember,
Yeah.
middle of all this, we've had the Final Four, by the way. So I mean, that's been going on too. So that's something that's had a lot of attention on that. And I mean, I don't know if there's anything that, like, I would say that's just completely just stands out as though, one of those wow or kind of shocking or surprising or any of those things. You're having guys start to build their staffs. And I think we talked last week about Mike White, starting to bring some of his guys over from Florida, and no surprise there. But I think other than that, I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting, and I'm sure, again, if you know, put it in the comments, because I've got a whole list here. But there's a lot of stuff that kind of can sneak through the cracks. But yeah, I mean, guys are starting to build their staffs. That's probably the best way to put it. I could tell you the specifics if we didn't just do a 5-minute spill on the transfer portal and the 1,500 names in there. But yeah, coaches are hiring other coaches. That's the best way to put it. So
I remembered my question. Transfer portal numbers. How does this compare to this time a year ago, or do you know?
yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it last week, where it was lower this year than it was last year. That was as of last week. So it was about 75, 100, I think, lower as of last year at this time. But I don't know that that's necessarily surprising, because I think last year was just one of those where it was basically just open season, and you pretty much knew what you're getting. But now I think it's somewhat similar. I don't think the numbers are all that important, just because I think the trend itself is still
Mm,
just, I mean, this is kind of is what it is. I mean, again, you've got what, 3 St. Peter's players put their names in
man.
on Tuesday morning, and Doug, he's probably headed to Seton Hall. It's just kind of, that's what you're seeing
Yeah.
now. I mean, again, Murray State's 2 of their players are jumping to LSU because of the coach. St. Peter's will have the same thing. Probably a couple of those guys will go to Seton Hall with Holloway. And yeah, that's what you expect now. Like I said, South Carolina had one go to UMass with Frank Martin, and so that's just the norm now. I think that's just kind of what you expect now in the transfer portal. So no, again, I can't say there's really just been any stunning surprises or anything. I just think you're still in that point where you see all verbal commit stuff. You see all the reporting about this team has reached out to this team. That doesn't tell me a whole lot. Because like I said, you look at what Arkansas and some other schools have done, or Musselman specifically, when he
They
was at
reach out
Nevada.
to everybody.
Reach out to everybody. So the reaching out part doesn't really tell me anything.
Yeah.
I know it's easy to get excited, but reaching out to a player is, like me sending a text message to you. I could do that in my sleep, right? Like I could do it in 3 seconds. And it's just one of those things where I don't put a lot of stock in that, because I think it's until things get a little bit further down the line. And there have been some players that have cut SEC teams into their top 10s and top 48s and all this other stuff. But man, I don't know. I'm not following that until it gets a little bit closer to give me a top 4. Okay. Like if it's top 10, top 15, we got a long way to go in that department. So I think until it gets to that point, I just don't. It's not easy to have a great feel for some of this. Some of it is very easily, you can easily figure it out. Like we said, the Murray State stuff, boom. We all knew 2 of those guys probably were coming to LSU. Like I said, St. Peter's guys, probably, if you're an SEC team looking for some of these St. Peter's guys, probably not happening. They're probably headed to Seton Hall.
Mm-hmm.
So it's those kind of things. You can try to connect the dots, and there's a lot of dots to connect, but until I start to see things that, it's like Tyree Appleby goes in the portal yesterday. Everybody's like, oh, yeah, be great. A lot of other SEC teams want him. Of course they do. But
yes.
until there's some sort of proof that, that this guy's headed to the school, I don't know what to say, right? It's just, I don't.
Yeah.
There's probably 150 schools out there that would love to have Tyree Appleby, but I don't know if it's going to be one of the other 13 teams in the SEC. I don't know if he goes to Georgia. I have no idea, So, so I think that's it. Like, it's just, I think the bigger discussion is going to be just about the transfer portal. And I know we have that discussion every year now, but, it's just, it is what it is. And thousands of players are going to transfer, over 1,000, not maybe about 2,000, but over 1,000 players are going to transfer every season. And it's just, things are going to look a lot different for certain teams. And like we said, I think specifically in the SEC, LSU is one of those teams that I looked at last year. Georgia had what, two or three guys coming back, maybe. If that, LSU has going to have no one coming back. So they're going to be, a team that just looks completely different next season.
I think everybody knows we're in the Nashville area. And so Belmont is a school that we follow a little bit here about. Belmont lost 2 big players to the portal. And I'm just thinking after that, you talked about Murray State, you talked about St. Peter's. I'm like, if you are a mid-major coach or a low-major coach who pops up and has a season like St. Peter's just had, how in the world do you ever even have a prayer of keeping a team together?
Yeah, it's just not. There's no, because you look around, like even some of the, it's even some of the bad teams, if you're, let's say if you're not just a team that's winning, even if you are, again, like you said, that's the nature of it. But like, let's say you're a bad team and the only positive you had this season was one guy or 2 guys that had great seasons, but yet, it's just like, okay, maybe we can build off of that next year, right? Like, okay, we had 2 guys that really stood out. Let's use that going into next season. Let's rebuild the roster on those 2 guys. Well, no, those 2 guys transfer. Then what? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Just back to square one. And I think Green Bay was one of the teams I saw yesterday. I think one of their better players. I know this is non-SEC, but it's like they won. I don't want to short them a win, but I want to say they won 5 games this year. And it wasn't. Yeah, they're 5-25. And I only say that because I do some of the Horizon League stuff for Blue Ribbon. But it's like, I think one of their better players, transfers, and it's, even again, let's say you're a team that just doesn't win a lot of games, and this is all you have to go on. Well, when one of those guys transfers, and I don't think he's transferring because he's not transferring because he just was a good player on a bad team. Like he's a good player. And so I think I don't know. Like there's no answer to that. It's NIL. It's the era of NIL, and unless you can have some sort of impact on that at your school, which mid-major schools, low-major schools, there's going to be a lot of challenges involved in that so early on, even 10 years down the road. If I can transfer and go to a power conference school, even if it's the worst power conference school out there, I can at least go there knowing that there's probably going to be more opportunities available for me to make some money
Yeah.
than. I mean, it's just, yeah, that's the nature of the game. I mean, I know people don't like when people use the word free agency and all this other stuff, but
But it is. There's no other
I
word
mean, it
for it.
is. Yeah, I mean, it is. And I mean, I'm not saying it in a negative way. I'm just saying that is what it is. So, everybody's going out, and whereas before it was, I think all the discussion was on playing time. Okay, well, maybe I can go play more here. And there's still part of that to it, but now it's like it is financially, there's financial motivations involved. And so, yeah, so I think that's to me too, when you're trying to figure out where players could go, and everybody likes to try to connect dots quickly as soon as guys are, go into the portal. I think that's much harder to do now because you don't know what opportunities are going to be available out there elsewhere when it comes to NIL and all this other stuff. So I think it makes it a lot harder to predict where some of these guys are gonna wind up.
The only job I might want less than a mid-major coach who has to do this is the poor guys who have to figure out graduation rates these days. And APR rates. I'm like, how does that even work anymore?
Well, like I can't even keep up anymore with like what classification some of these guys are. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if they're sophomores, I don't know if they're juniors, are they 6 years? I have no idea. Like it's hard to keep up with some. I appreciate all the SIDs out there. I've said this before, but I appreciate all the SIDs who on team roster pages on their websites tell us specifically if they are a 6-year senior,
Yes.
if they are,
Thank you.
doesn't just say senior. It specifically says 5th year, 6th year, or years of eligibility remain. There's some schools that do that where they can tell you exactly how many years they have left. I appreciate those people. And I know that's not easy for them either because I wouldn't want to try to figure that out. It's hard.
Designations are meaningless. Like sophomore could be 2nd year on campus or 4th year on campus.
There's 3 different designations you could have of someone listed as a sophomore. So
yeah,
it's So
you're seeing 6th year guys in college baseball now.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's where the challenges come in. So
yeah,
I mean, yeah, I know we're kind of all over the place, but it's just, look, guys. I mean, I'm not putting out my bracketology for 2023 yet. So I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of people out there who start doing this week, but I'm not doing it.
No.
So if you want the bracketology, all I can tell you is right now, I think that Arkansas and Kentucky are top 5 teams. I think Alabama, Tennessee, maybe Auburn, probably top 15, 20 teams. After that, I have no idea. So there's too many moving pieces. So I don't even know what to say after that. So.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like if you're a mid-major coach, how do you put together a recruiting plan? Because let's say you got a stud point guard. How do you convince another stud point guard to come join
Hope and
you?
Pray.
Yeah, because you're thinking, okay, well, he's going to say, well, I got this guy in front of me. I'm not going to play. If you're a coach, you're thinking, well, wait a minute. This guy blows up. He's probably going to leave me for a Power 5 school, and I got to get the next step ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. It's a good thing you're getting paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
That's right.
Because otherwise it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just it's the nature of the game at this point. It's just the nature of how things work. And like I said, there's mid-major coaches had challenges before, but they have a lot more challenges now because of NIL and all this other stuff. So there's just so many opportunities out there. And as we said, think about it now, like there's a lot of opportunities out there right away, but we're not even close to the amount of opportunities that are going to be available 5 years from now. It's only going to drive even more in that direction, which in a sense perhaps could help some of the smaller schools, because I think you're going to see more people get involved in this. And, that's where we talk about like I don't remember the discussion we were having. Maybe it was about Missouri when they hired Gates, and we were talking about kind of the the NIL aspect. And no, we were comparing it like to Arkansas, right? And we're seeing like what Arkansas is doing now from a recruiting standpoint and getting Brazil and those kind of things. That was the discussion we were having about why would it be more appealing, not just from a recency winning standpoint, but why is it more appealing to make that move if you're an SEC player going from SEC to SEC? It's because there are certain programs and coaches that are adapting very well to this. And again, I think Muss is one of those, and we've been saying this for years, even before NIL. He's just someone that's adapted to the transfer market itself, and that's why I think that's where, I mean, it goes back to the new coaches. All the new coaches in the league, that is a big part now. It's not just can you just coach basketball. It's can you adapt and have those things in place. But even if you do have the skills to do it, are you going to get the support locally?
Yeah.
To do that? And I think that's the big question. So, yeah. So
I'm going to ask you another question, and you're going to hate me for this, but 10 years from now, how many teams are in Division I basketball, or whatever they call whatever it is that's got the Power 5 leagues in it?
Yeah, that's a good question. That could go a lot of different ways.
Well, and I didn't ask you that question expecting you would have a ready answer for that, but the point I'm making is the answer you just gave. It just the exercise of predicting the landscape, even to next week, is impossible. I don't have any idea. Like, I used to feel like you could get some sort of idea of where any of this was headed. I'll go on shows and people ask me questions, and I'm sure I look like a moron. Maybe I do anyway. But the point is, I don't know how you even construct the mechanics of an answer to this stuff, if that even makes sense. Like, how do you even say, well, because of this, this, and this, I think this? How do you even size up all the variables in that anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to do, and I think that's why I think, again, the adapting part of it is going to be so important for a lot of guys. Yeah, I think it's just we'll see, and I think we'll see this transfer cycle. Like, I think we're already seeing it with some of these guys, but like you'll start to see. I think, again, especially for the new coaches, like if we really just focus in and zoom in on those guys, we're going to see very quickly, I think, how either the schools can help adapt to that in terms of, like we said, it's interesting to think, but like, you're coaching a basketball team, but it's not just necessarily about you anymore in terms of your staff and what you can do. There's a lot of outside factors that have to come into play, I think, for you to have success moving forward. Right? I mean, I think that's it. Because again, Lamont Paris, let's just take him as an example, and we'll use all the other guys. Lamont Paris, let's say it's your South Carolina. It's not just can you build a roster, it's what's that support going to look like? Can you build a roster to compete with whatever, you're having to go up against with Arkansas, Kentucky, and Auburn, and Tennessee, and all these others, not just from the basketball standpoint. It's just from the opportunities and convincing, 18 to 22-year-old kids that, which, I mean, let's say this. Of all the players in college basketball, what's the percentage do you think that are going to turn down a financial opportunity?
Yeah.
Right? That's a low number. I mean, we're talking very, very low. So that's it. And I mean, I think that's why, in a sense, that's why I think SEC football is only going to get stronger.
Well, of course.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's not because, look, football, we know. I mean, it's only going to get stronger, not just because Texas and Oklahoma are coming, and that those two schools are going to adapt easily, and they already are. But even though football is still king in a lot of different places, I mean, it's just when you look at what the SEC and these schools are going to be able to offer NIL-wise, it's going to be hard to compete with it. And so I think that's, so.
I'll tell you what I think is going to be very interesting to see how this plays out for baseball.
Yeah, well, I mean that's
Because
a
in,
good
in,
point.
in
Yeah.
baseball now you're actually competing against a competing offer from the pro leagues. Like, is there going to be enough money left over for NIL efforts to be able to make competitive bids to tell a kid, all right, the Mets are offering you $3 million to go sign right away. Didn't choose the Mets on purpose, but that is an interesting one. We'll match that for you to come to Georgia, or fill in the blank with any school. Like, how much appetite is left after you get through football and basketball? Although you might say in some places it's football and then baseball before basketball.
Yeah. I had to pull this up because I was remembering we may have brought this up, but I don't know if we did or not. I'm not sure when we had this discussion at some point. But there was the Kirby Smart comment from, gosh, was that before they played the national title game? I had to pull this up because I remember him saying something about it. It was Saban kind of had echoed the same thing. But what Kirby Smart said was, you're going to have the haves and the have-nots, and that the separation is already there, is only going to grow larger,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But I mean, he's right about that. Like the separation, that's what we just said, like is only going to continue to grow. And I think that's where, I mean, it's easy for him to say that, right? But I mean, it's look at it in the rest of the quotes, like the schools that have the capacity and the ability and are more competitive in NIL market are going to be schools that step ahead on top of other schools. So I don't want recruiting decisions to be based on that, but ultimately a lot of young men want to make their decision based on that. Yes, like that is the landscape now. Whether we're talking about football, basketball, baseball, like that's just the way it is. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, you say that. Tennessee just got a superstar quarterback who's, top of the heap 5-star. He's not going to Georgia or Alabama. See, I've always said I'm not.
But
I think it'll
right?
make the gap between. Well,
the
here's
power conference schools closer because
no doubt.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, you can start the season, and you can pick 6 teams. Like if I said, Blake, I'll give you 6 teams to make the college. I'll give you. There's 4 college football playoff spots. I can't speak today. Give me 6 teams that'll be in there. You're going to nail 3 of them at minimum, and maybe all 4. In other words, I'll give you 6 choices for the 4. What I'm getting at, does that get a little bit tougher a few years from now, because it has narrowed the gap from Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and it's brought Tennessee. Because I'm naming Tennessee because Tennessee used to be a team that 20 years ago was at the top of the heap, but has not been for a while now. In other words, what I'm saying is, does it close the gap between those? No, I think it makes the gap between all those teams, including Tennessee and whoever might join that top tier. And again, I'm just throwing Tennessee out as an example because it's an easy one to pick. You could, maybe you could even see South Carolina, given the way Spurrier had them. Well, Tennessee was at a totally different level 20 years ago than Carolina was at 10. I'm rambling, but what it is going to do is it's going to make the gap between those teams and Vanderbilt a lot wider, and it's going to make the gap between those teams and Louisiana Tech much wider.
Yeah, and that's where I think like football, and there are going to be differences in each one. Like you said, basketball, I think you're going to have a lot of, because we've seen how quickly in basketball you can, just because it's less players, right? Like it's you're building a team off of less numbers, and I think it's just one of those things where I think everyone can kind of stay together somewhat. Now, not everyone, you're not going to have that every season, but you're going to have a group that can kind of feel like, all right, you're one player away from this making that jump or whatever. And but look, it goes back to where you can have all the NIL money in the world, but there's also an element of guys want to play, and it's one thing to go there and want to just be part of that, but you also, I mean, that's what we've seen, like guys who transfer down, right? Like that's, especially again, if we look at basketball, it's just, you want to play too. So it's there's so many different elements that come into play, but I think our bigger point is that it's very clear that this is probably, again, more so, I think, football. We know the numbers that are out there in football in terms of, I mean, it's already proven. Like we have proof of that. And, we have obvious stuff with basketball too, where we talk about the Walker Kessler and Dunkaroos thing. And again, there's so many different options you can pick. But yeah, so I think it's just, there's just so many different ways you can go with this, and I know everyone has a different opinion on it, but it makes for a good discussion because you're basically all playing a what if game of how's this going to look 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and what's the bigger impact going to be? How's it going to close? Because I think we know, because of the NCAA tournament, I don't know how much it changes in terms of, like, I'll say this the right way, success in the tournament, because we know how the tournament works, right? Like, we saw this year. I mean, St. Peter's gets the Elite Eight. Not going to happen every year, but you're judging that a little bit differently than based on maybe just the year after year sort of results you get from teams. Whereas you may have a team like St. Peter's that makes that run for one season, right? But guess what? They're not going to make it next season because, I mean, listen, St. Peter's Peacocks fans, I'm not hating on you. It's just you're going to lose your coach. You're going to lose half the team or more. And so I think that's where the turnover in basketball is just so wild now. And I think it's different than football in that respect. And again, I don't know what the numbers were football wise, but to me though, it's different because it's obviously it's a different sport, but it's just, I don't know, like it's the lower numbers because you only have 5 players on the floor at one time. That gains such a big,
yes,
you know what I mean? Like there's just such a big,
I don't know, the leverage gained or lost from losing a stud is much bigger than if you lose your star running back.
There you go. That's how I was trying to say it. Yeah. By the way, one thing I forgot to mention quickly, Oscar Tshiebwe, I forgot to bring this up. And once again, he declared for the draft, but I think he also commented on I think there's some wiggle room there where I don't think they know if he's coming back or not. And I think it's here it is. I wanted to find the quote. I knew he said this on Sunday. Says he's been praying about it, big decision to make. And that, I mean, he's just basically, it's what you would expect. So he loves Kentucky thinking about it. But I mean, he is one that I think is a lot more interesting than you would think, because I think there is a reason, because, again, not necessarily having to jump to the NBA right now if you're him, because I don't know what his, NIL stuff looks like or anything, but there's a guy that's not going to have any shortage of, options, I don't think. So.
Yeah, we're not around these guys all the time. We're not that kind of thing. You just judge what you see and hear, but it seemed like a lot of kids that were easy to root for this year in the league, and he was certainly at or near the top of the list.
Yeah, and I don't even know exactly where he's at on like the draft stuff right now. I mean, I think it's probably early second round would be my guess, maybe somewhere in there. Late first round, maybe. So yeah, I mean, I think that makes your decision a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But clearly that's, like I said, again, as we mentioned, there's just so much stuff happening. But there's another big one that's obviously, Kentucky gets him back, then I think you are looking at Kentucky as probably, maybe number 1, number 2 going to next season. But like I said, I think Arkansas is right there if Jaylin Williams comes back too. So I think there's a good chance. We're saying this on April the 5th. I think there's a good chance Kentucky and Arkansas are top 5 teams in the preseason next season. So
a lot of work going on here behind the scenes, Blake.
My goodness, it's just like I just said,
it's not just basketball, but
right. No, there's so much going on. And,
I had a crazy weekend. Had a very interesting weekend watching some baseball. So yeah, working on the story there. It takes time. It takes diligence. It takes a lot of sources, and asking a lot of people for quotes. So,
well, you're a better man than I am at that kind of stuff, because I'm just this basketball guy who sat around and realized that the national championship game started at 8:30 last night instead of 7:30.
Honest to God, I was so busy with other stuff it did not occur to me that there was a basketball. No, if the SEC had been involved, it would have been different. Somebody said something to me in passing about 5 o'clock. It's like, oh yeah, that's tonight. that's been my last 48 hours. Is just other stuff.
I hear you. That's like I say, baseball and basketball are very different in terms of. I don't know. I don't know what the best wording is for it, but it's like again, you have more games in baseball.
Let me just hit this here and now, okay? There is a lot of stuff going on in college baseball right now that people have no idea what they're looking at. They have no context for. They don't know to look for. And unless you were around in 2009 and understood that, and unless you were really watching and paying attention and keeping your ear to the ground, you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea what's going on, and that's what we're trying to get at. And get at it to a degree and a level, and literally give you every side of the story that there is, and that takes time. That takes effort. That takes thinking of things and making sure you got all your bases covered. It's stressful, but that has been my last 48 hours, as you know. And will be at least my next 24.
There's got to be a basketball game out there somewhere I can make you watch, but there's not. It's over.
I don't have the energy and the bandwidth. You can probably tell I'm dragging today. The Pistons aren't firing as well as they normally might, but that's that is life on a story.
By the way, congrats to South Carolina. National champions.
Oh yeah,
women's basketball.
Yeah, those guys.
By the way,
speaking
of that, anyone's interested in women's basketball, the SEC, let us know, because I did put some stuff out on Twitter last week to gauge some interest, and I will tell you, I got several messages from people who were very interested in SEC women's basketball. Now, I know it's not going to be quite, again, it's just I think the coverage is not as big, but as we've always said, right? That's a good thing for us. That's why we're here. We try to lean in on that kind of stuff. So if you have any interest in SEC women's basketball, let us know, because that is something that we have thought a lot about. And I think it's it may be more written stuff than videos or that kind of stuff, but we're always trying to look for the next idea and the next thing. So if you enjoy women's basketball too, let us know, and we may do some of that next season as well.
How many random and annoying phone calls have you gotten from me in the last 15 minutes with a night? Would that be a double-digit number or a triple-digit number?
It's got to be triple at this point.
Yeah, of ideas, and it's like, hey, we should be doing this, and it's like, oh wait, there's two of us.
The chances of us ever being the SEC football guys are very low, but the chances of us being the guys who do everything other than SEC football, I think, are growing higher and higher by the day.
And football we will get there. Well, we cover it anyway. But we are building this way.
We understand that there are a lot of people out there, football wise, that also do this as well.
The guiding philosophy of Southeastern 14 is there are many places you can get football stuff, and we would just be mostly covering the same ground. We will have our own opinions, our own angles that are different. But baseball and basketball, we feel like we have this pretty well because we have watched a lot of it and still watch a lot of it. And I don't think there's two guys doing a podcast anywhere that watch more baseball and basketball in the SEC than the two of us do combined. So
there you go.
That's kind of us. All right, parting thoughts.
Nope. We'll have something this week.
Yeah.
Something's going. There's always something going on, like we said. So, more of these videos. Hit subscribe. I think our subscriber counts, still growing. Even though we haven't done video in several days, yet our subscriber count's still growing, and a lot of great comments as usual. And so we appreciate all of you, and you're the best.
Yeah, parting thoughts, or hit the subscribe button. And again, I think we should have something kind of interesting and very informative, I guess is a good way to put it, on some things that are going on around that are being talked about a lot. So,
meanwhile, I'll probably just be tweeting about snacks at this point because I mean, what
what
else do I have to do other than
stay off
like
Twitter?
I said, I'll watch baseball, but I mean, like I don't. What do I do now? Is it again bracketology? I gotta start putting my bracketology together. It's we're only what 11 and a half months away at this point, so got to get it going, man. I got to get my number 1 seeds locked in for next season. There you go. Bracketology coming soon.
Yeah, that's
AKA
like
10 months
that's like picking NFL playoff forecasts before free agency and the draft occur. So.
I don't know how these guys do it. I have no idea how they do it. Because again, there will be someone out there that's going to put their bracketology out this week for next season, and I don't. And I know Lenardi's going to do it. And I have nothing against Lenardi, but I know he does it for fun. But boy, the reaction to that is going to be just incredible. It's going to be incredible. I don't know how else to say it. So give us your bracketology in the comments. Give me all 68 teams for the 2023 tournament. That's what I want. There's your homework assignment.
I think we could do a bracketology of listeners and commenters of the show easier than we could do a bracketology of that could get dangerous though.
You know what we're gonna have to do? We're gonna have to start doing, and radio shows do this a lot, but I don't necessarily say I tap into them all that much. But for us, I think it'd be fun. Is we need like an off-season tournaments where we just do some random tournaments. Whether it's just picking, I don't know, old teams, players. I don't know. It's just something interactive and fun. Tournaments we can have some fun with. And as I mentioned to you, by the way, we've talked about it. We're pretty well connected on the basketball and baseball front, and we will have some interviews coming soon. Already kind of working on a few coaching interviews basketball-wise. So stay tuned to that. We'll have those hopefully in the next couple weeks. Let these guys kind of settle down a little bit. But, hopefully have some of those really starting this month and well into the off season. So
we could do SEC baseball coaches as Seinfeld characters.
Yeah, you'd have to lead on that one.
Except we will not be doing that, I will tell you. Now, if y'all want to do them and let us know, well, have at it. But I'm not going to touch that one this week.
Yeah, maybe not the best idea for you at this moment, but we'll have some fun. We got football coach. We could easily do that with football coaches. So we could easily do a Seinfeld SC football coaches one. Lane Kiffin, I'm already thinking about that one.
I've got a brief aside here. I was having a conversation with another guy in media the other day about you could go back and create like almost a sitcom with 2013 era SEC football coaches. Give that some thought.
Probably so.
And maybe there's a show idea for a slow day.
There you go. Before you know it, we're going to get into live theater here on the podcast. We're going to do our own sitcom. So we're going to do acting. We're going to have all kinds of stuff. So
yeah, we might have to invoke the bag of shame.
Really evolving here on the 14. Which, again, will soon become the 16. Sooner.
That's right.
Rather than later. We'll have to get used to that. Texas and Oklahoma, come on down. So.
Thanks for watching. Don't take yourselves too seriously, and we'll see you again soon.